Hello, everybody. We're back with another interview of the Wildcard regions. Today I'm joined by Novem, who has been casting the Latin America South CLS, which has recently concluded. So we're doing a bit of an interview here before the MSI tournament. How are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely great, Louis. How are you?
It's a bit late, but I'm fine.
Yeah, well, that's my fault.
Yeah, it's always your fault. Everything is your fault.
Blame me for everything. I can take all of it!
I mean, we can't really blame you for the CLS broadcast because it's quite amazing.
Thank you. I put a lot of work into it, so that's good to know.
Definitely, from our wildcard broadcasts, I definitely recommend this the most. Maybe, I mean, I would recommend the LCL just because I love the LCL, but...
He's not biased at all.
Yeah, but let's go. So you're casting the Latin America South League. So first of all, do you how much do you know about the infrastructure state of the game down there? Do they live in one place, like for example in one city? Do they have team houses? Do they have analysts, coaches? How much do you know about that?
Some of the teams have some pretty extensive support staff, but as far as living accommodations, as far as I'm aware, KLG is the only team down there with a gaming house. I think they're starting to build up a bit more, and I think that if MSI goes well for them, that will in particular become a more popular thing to have. I just think they're more focused on having decent support staffs over shared living accommodations at the moment.
So, do they all live in a certain place, or are they scattered across, Latin America South?
That one I don't have any idea of. I would assume that they live in generally the same area.
All right. So we had the finals in Chile. Is that usually the place where CLS is held?
No, they did it in a different area of Chile, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure that the studio is actually in Chile as well. It's just in a different location. Either way, it was a really great location to hold the finals. The views were pretty spectacular. I know during the broadcast, they had their analyst desk just like right in front of this window that just overlooked the lake near the Teatro del Lago. It looked absolutely amazing, and of course, just the interior was really good as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
lots of room for the crowd.
Yeah, I saw it as well. On your broadcast, looked really nice. A lot of glass. To look outside on that beautiful lake. Yeah, but let's not dwell too long on living accommodations and the scenery. Let's jump in. To the CLS in terms of gameplay. So, in general, how does the CLS play? So, there are like 5 major things you can do in a game. So that's slit pushing, team fighting, poking, sieging, and picking people off. So, to what does the CLS tend to the most?
I think generally the CLS teams focus on team fighting, but I have noticed that the higher level teams that are in the CLS are generally more methodical about when to take their team fights. They're more focused on the objectives and pushing up minion waves to meet the demands of a good macro game. This is especially clear for Isurus Gaming, and I also noticed that the best teams in the league just tend to rely on their mid laners, and that would be Furious Gaming and Isurus. Isurus, of course, who won the final and will be going to the mid-season invitational representing Latin America South. They have their mid laner EMP, and the thing is that even though EMP is an absolutely great mid laner, I don't think he's actually the best mid laner in the region. That would have to go to Furious Gaming Fury. Once we get some more into talking about the actual final series, I'll break that down a bit more.
All right, so in general, let's go through some of the lanes. So in the top lane, we kind of have recently had the spat between tanks and carries, with Camille coming back in, now the Rune King, Fizz coming back, Fiora being in there. We have seen a bit of a shift towards carries, but the tanks are still hanging in there. So what is kind of the favor for the CLS teams?
So I don't think the CLS was really affected by the carry shift in the top lane meta. They stuck to tanks for most all the time. I think that CLS teams generally prefer having their tank coming from the top lane. Particularly Ache, you'd always see him on Ache, who's the top laner of Furious Gaming. You'd always see him on stuff like Maokai or Shen. Those are just really popular picks for the region. They don't really pick up the Rumble or the Camille or the Fiora or any of those things.
All right, that's interesting. Next up, jungle. We have kind of we have a carry jungle style where you basically try to get in the enemy jungler's face, or you kind of try to play around him. So I guess both styles are there in the CLS, correct?
Slightly. I would say that they tend more towards the carry jungle style, and I'm gonna put that in air quotes just because the way a lot of the junglers tend to play is to facilitate the rest of their teams, but usually on carry style champions. Like the Rengar in particular is extremely popular, and it's mostly used to just create these long range engages for the rest of the team, and generally the team plays around those kinds of engages off of the Elise, or as I already mentioned, the Rengar, or anything really that can create those types of engages, but can also have lots of follow-up damage on that engage, so that before they go down, they can put in a sizable dent to whoever they went in on.
All right, that kind of doesn't sound like Ivern. So how's the state of Ivern in the CLS?
I don't even remember it being picked. I think it's been picked once, maybe. But yeah, they don't generally tend towards the Ivern. It's mostly these carry style junglers like Elise and Rengar. Those are two of those are by far the most popular jungle picks in the CLS. All
right, so from what I've heard so far, and maybe we can confirm that with the mid lane, it kind of sounds like they're playing still a bit solo queue-esque. Is that a decent analysis, or?
I would not say that. I think that they play as teams a lot better than most of the other wildcard regions, which I understand might be a controversial statement. But the thing is that when the junglers are going in to facilitate, they're generally trying to facilitate their mid lane, and because they're always team fighting around each other, and that team fighting is actually pretty good. I would not call it a solo queue style, just because they know how to play around their teammates. They make moves that are for their teammates. It's different than you would see in like the solo QS challenger teams. And I was casting the NACS Open qualifiers the other day, and that's why I would in particular say this, because I actually saw a team that totally represented that solo QE style, where every single member of that team, when they made a move, they made it for themselves and not their teammates. And that's not what CLS teams generally do, or at least not the better ones. They definitely play around generally their mid lane, but they can also shift it to playing around their bottom lane, and they generally play around the objectives and getting their team in there to do some damage.
All right. You already said that CLS teams kind of rely on their mid laners. We recently had a shift towards more roaming mid laners. Did that arrive in first of all, on what patch did the CLS actually end?
The CLS ended on patch 7.5. Oh. They played all of the playoffs on the same patch, on like a certain other league. Yeah. But yeah, so as far as the roaming style mid laners are concerned, I don't think I don't think it really had much of an impact. I think they were playing mostly the same mid laners. Yuri in particular, who I consider to be the best mid laner in the entire league by a reasonable margin, although EMP is pretty close, he's played a lot of Vladimir, and he really loves that champion, but other stuff that would show up is like Ahri, or but Ahri's showing up everywhere. She's just a really great mid laner right now, and I'm trying to think. Echo was also really popular. So yeah, I would say that they play the roaming mid laners, like you said, but I don't think it was a sudden thing. I think they've been mostly focused on this style all season.
All right, that's interesting. Did you see any LeBlanc picks since her giant nerfs?
Because the Hextech LeBlanc thing gained popularity after the CLS ended. No, we did not see any LeBlanc. Right. We saw a LeBlanc, but it just wasn't on the Hextech build, and it wasn't one of the more popular ones. Definitely, we saw the Vladimir, Syndra, and Echo a lot more.
All right. Bottom line, did the CLS all in on the Blade of the Rune King yet?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think they had gotten onto the Blade of the Rune King by the end of the season, and but I think unlike other regions, a lot of the crux of whether bot lane performed well or not was really on what the support was doing rather than what the AD was doing. There are some pretty good ADs in the CLS, but the supports have been really, really great. And I'm just trying to remember who Ezreal's gaming support was before you bring it up.
Yeah.
The one person that slipped my mind that's important.
Yeah. I mean, if you need it, obviously go into the wikis.
Yep, I got it. I bought enough time.
So in general, do you think that the CLS prefers, very aggressive AD carries, or are they more of the laid back damage dealers?
I think it mostly depends on the situation. They particularly like the Lucian, but I wouldn't say they play it super aggressively. I don't see them flashing aggressively to get kills or anything like that. I'd say they play around their AD carries really well. Even as I was saying earlier, they play around their teammates, and they definitely play around the AD carry role as well. They are very good at protecting the backline even after initiating, and that's what fosters what I consider to be perfectly decent team fighting. I don't think it competes with the team fighting of the major regions around the world quite yet, but it's definitely at a higher level than you would see from most of the wildcard regions, just because they know how to protect that backline, and they know how to, if they don't have a super passive support pick, how to redistribute the rest of the team to make sure that backline and that AD carry stays protected so that they can move around the backline. And with the Lucian in particular, they would just sweep all the way around that backline with the better AD carriers of the CLS. They'd just be dashing all around that backline so that they can apply as much damage as possible before the fight ends. And that was definitely the focus of the CLS AD carries.
All right. So lastly, we come to the support position. So we have kind of, first of all, we have the divide between mage supports and more engage heavy supports, but also we have the divide between roaming and stationary supports that really play around their AD carry. You already said that they facilitate their AD carries quite a lot. So is there not that much roaming going on, or are the supporters relatively roam happy as well?
I think it really depends on which support out of the supports in the CLS you pick. I would say Newbie on Ezreal is a lot more roam heavy, whereas Tolls on Furious Gaming was a lot more aggressive, especially because he really liked picking up the Zyra, which I didn't really see from many other people. And of course, just as it was in most of the other regions, at the time, Lulu was super popular all season. It was almost 100% pick ban. It's certainly, actually no, it was 100% pick ban since about week 7, and it went through all playoffs. It was just that good, and that's, I think, important to that narrative I was trying to say, in that they play around their AD carries. That's the key champion to play around your AD carry.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. So, one question. How long is the average game time of the CLS? Are they playing into the late game, or are they trying to try to force early leads and try to force the game from there?
I would say that most CLS games last between 30 and 40 minutes. When you get to the bottom tier teams, KLG in particular tends to push things to super late game. But I think that's just because that, unlike the other teams in the league, they don't really have the skill to claim victory against any of the other teams through straight-up methods. So they push it into the super late game where both sides are at a disadvantage because they haven't really practiced in that area of expertise.
All right. So in general, CLS teams would go for the fight, where they could maybe get a slight lead if they didn't fight.
Yeah, I'd say they don't take fights for no reason. They are pretty aggressive, but I'd say that every single fight that a CLS team initiates generally has some kind of purpose, usually to create an opportunity to take an objective, or just to knock them back and prevent them from pushing up in order to buy time. Like, even if it's like the most tenuous reason for engaging, they will take it, but they're not mindlessly aggressive.
All right. So
I'd say they have the basics of macro play down.
All right.
The top ones are actually really good, particularly Isris.
All right, that's a good transition here. So we want to talk about, obviously, the CLS representative at MSI, which is Isris Gaming. So tell us a bit about who are the carries on Isris and how are they facilitated?
So on Isris, the primary carries of that team, I would say, are EMP, who is their mid laner, and Pride, who is their top laner. Sorry, it slipped my mind for a second. But the thing is, they play incredibly risky. And another thing to mention is that QQmore was actually the one we ended up giving the MVP to, as far as just the finals set is concerned. So he's doing decently well. I wouldn't say that he was like a super hyper carry style player. He generally just pushes into the jungle, and he's really good at pressuring the other jungler to make mistakes, which is why we ended up giving him the MVP for that series, just because we didn't see much else that series. It was a very clean 3-0. But generally the carries of Isris Gaming are definitely EMP in the mid lane and Pride in the top lane. EMP is really consistent. But I think the problems in Isris, and why I think that Curious Gaming probably would have just been a better representative for the Latin America South, is just, one, their bottom lane is really not that great, and two, Pride is very inconsistent, and he's shown a propensity for pushing up his lane without warding his flank.
So would you say that QQmore might be more inclined to help top lane then?
Yeah, I'd say he's more inclined to protect his solo lanes, which is generally a good idea because, again, I don't think that their bottom lane is very good. Even in terms of CLS, I'd put them maybe third. They're just they're decent. They get their job done, but they don't really do anything particularly impressive.
All right, might be a problem against the LJL, as they told me. They like to dive there, but let's not go there yet. So I say they focus around, top and mid lane carries. So especially Pride, what is kind of his champion pool to pull off that carrying?
One champion that he pulled out in the most recent weeks was lots of Renekton. He actually did a game where he totally destroyed the initial second place, which would be Last Kings. Totally wiped them out. Made their top laner Nifu go 0-5-0 on Fiora.
Oh.
He went 9-1-7 that game. Totally carried his team to absolute victory. But to contrast that, there was a game in, I think, week 6 where he would just keep pushing in the side lane over and over again, almost never warding anything for his flank. So what would happen is he would push up, he would get ganked 2v1 by Kha'Zix and some other champion, and he would just die over and over again like that. He ended the game with 12 deaths. And he was playing Kennen, who has pretty decent escapes, so you can understand how poorly he played that game, and he does this push up without warding his flanks a lot. So I just see him getting punished for it a lot on the international stage.
So would you?
So I'm not confident in him as far as that's concerned. I don't think he'll really show up.
Do you think he's kind of a tilt player? Tries to make up for his mistakes, kind of Hooney style when he was still at Fnatic?
he's super aggressive, and when he has the goals and when he is not punished, he is really good. But I am worried that international teams are going to punish him a lot more for him pushing up without any vision behind him to see if anyone is coming to gank him. The thing is that most of Pride's successes, I would have to say, inside of just the league of the CLS that we've seen, and particularly in the little we saw them towards the end of the season, was really off of the back of Pride not being punished for whatever he did, which would be pushing up without those wards behind him, without the vision and information he needed to know that he was safe doing that. And another thing is that he's so focused on the 1v1 that he doesn't really roam a lot.
All right. Do you think it that this playstyle keeps happening due to a lack of, let's say, competition in the region? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, just because for most of the regular season, the top 2 and the bottom 4 of the league were very clearly divided. Furious Gaming really picked up towards the end of the season and really took second place for their own. So I think that the league in general is improving, but yeah, definitely the bottom 3 teams right now, at least, are not as good as the top 3. And Last Kings hit a serious slump towards the end of the season, so they might not even be in the running for the top 2 anymore. Like, they finished in second place. They were very clearly second place. They finished 5 points ahead of Furious Gaming, and Furious Gaming only managed to get that close because of their absolute stomps in the last couple of weeks, where I think they won 7 games straight without losing. And every set in the CLS is a best of 2. So it was interesting to see that. And but yeah, I think Last Kings have mostly lost their dominant spot, and they were looking really bad towards the end of the season. Which when we talk about the actual gauntlet of the playoffs, I can talk about that a little more.
All right, so I guess we can actually get in there now. So Last Kings, no, not Last Kings. Sorry, Furious Gaming had to start right at the beginning, right?
Yep, they had to start right at the beginning of the gauntlet. They were going against Rebirth Esports, who finished 4th. We generally expected that Rebirth would lose this series, but honestly, it was a little bit closer than we expected. Rebirth did a pretty good job. They managed to take a game off, and they have shown propensity all season for being able to take games off of better teams just by pushing it towards the later game stages, but they don't do it as much as KLG does. They only do it when they're really under pressure. They don't do it every game. I just think that's the default strategy for Latin America South teams when they fall into like a bad spot, when they're not really that great as a team, is that they'll try and push it as late game as possible so that their chances of winning increase.
All right. So it was a pretty clean series then?
Yeah, it was a 3-1 to Furious Gaming. Yuri was an absolute monster that series. I remember there was at least one game-saving play he made, and 2 of those games he just rocketed off to hilariously large leads. Like game 2, I believe, he was playing Kassadin. He did not die until he already had 6 kills. And then on another, the last game, game 4, he went Deathless Oriana 6-0-8 by the end of the game. He was a total monster that series.
So would you say, like, does he need a lot of setup for his plays, or does he seek the plays himself?
I think it's a mixture of the two. He works really well with Julio Stedo, which I think really helps him do those things, but he's also proficient enough to create his own plays. Usually the first kill or 2 that he gets is off of Julio Stedo, sometimes even making a mistake, but being able to draw pressure back towards Yuri for him to take advantage of it. One particular play I can remember is that Julio Stedo was caught out in the enemy red side jungle when they were playing on blue side, and he went towards the Baron pit. Yuri immediately comes over and just immediately picks up 2 kills on Kassadin after Julio Stedo dies, just because they had ignored the power of the just level 6 Kassadin, and he just totally swept them up. He was all over the place that fight, took them both out, rocketed himself to that early 2-0 lead that totally carried the rest of the game, and put him into a position to really split push effectively.
All right. So next up, they had to face the Last Kings then, who, as you said, had a bit of a slump.
Yeah, they were in a slump, but I still expected them to win. It's like How can a team that just was so clearly the second place team not even put up a modicum of a fight? It was a quick 3-0. Like, Furious Gaming totally dismantled them. The closest game was the last one, which actually stretched out to, I think, 50 minutes, but it was mostly because the composition Furious Gaming had drafted was one that couldn't really win team fights in the late game, but they still managed to win just off of really intelligent use of their macro. They would go to the side lanes, push up minions, and then look for the little weak points, the chinks in Last King's armor and defenses to go in, take one objective at a time, despite being able to absolutely not win any straight up 5v5. They could not win a team fight at all. Even probably 4v5, they wouldn't be able to win that team fight. But they still managed to pull out the victory just by playing around the objectives, rotating between the lanes, and it was really spectacular.
All right. Do you think that Last Kings kind of had a problem adapting to, the 7.5 meta?
I'm not particularly sure. I don't remember if there are any particularly big changes in the 7.5 patch. The Blade of the Rune King in particular was a 7.4 thing, but yeah, that was around the time they started slumping, so it might have been problems with the patch, but honestly, they were just playing really poorly. They weren't working together as a team, and their individual players weren't showing up.
All right, so last up, we come to the grand finals between Furious Gaming and Isurus Gaming, and I know from talking to you, you were quite hyped for Furious Gaming at that point.
Oh, I was. I don't want to act like I'm a fanboy or biased towards them. I just saw problems in the way Isurus Gaming had played the game, and Furious Gaming were riding such a huge tidal wave of momentum by that point. And in the last week, the last match that Furious Gaming had against Isurus, they flat out 2-0'd them. So at that point, yeah, I was expecting them to win, or at least put up a really big fight, but they didn't. It was a quick, clean 3-0 by Isurus.
All right, you said they played Isurus in the week before playoffs. So what did Isurus improve upon to basically pull this out?
Well, I think the reason it didn't end up going very well for them is they probably didn't really care so much about the match at that point. It had absolutely no consequences for them, or Furious Gaming for that matter. It was a totally consequenceless match, but if Furious Gaming actually put their nose to the grindstone and played it out. But I think a few of the players, particularly Pride and Isurus, just blew it off like it was nothing. He picked Dr. Mundo, for instance, which is not a popular pick in the CLS. I think he just picked it to troll, but still, it was such a clean game that even if Isurus weren't taking it incredibly seriously, it looked like Furious Gaming was going to be serious competition for them in the playoffs.
All right, so looking at Isurus, going to the Mid-Season Invitational, do you think they can gain a lot from, the experience of maybe scrimming against some of the best teams in the world, having that competition?
Yeah, I think they can. So I haven't really talked about the positives of Isurus Gaming yet. I've mostly talked about the negatives just because they're kind of clear to me. Their bot lane's not that great. Their top lane is super inconsistent, but at the same time, their macro play is absolutely spectacular, and that is what won them the entire final set, was just them quickly rotating between the lanes. And that's another reason I can't really talk about what Isurus does well, because the games were so short and so easy for them. It was kind of mind-blowing. Like none of the games were close. Furious Gaming never established any kind of gold lead. They were totally destroyed. Isurus Gaming just rotated between the lanes, took towers, took objectives, won game. It was very simple, very straightforward, and it wasn't off of the back of any particularly good individual play on anyone on Isurus. It was just they totally blew open their lanes, except for mid lane. Because as I said, Uri's a monster, but even in a losing game, he always ends up looking good. But yeah, so it was hard to pick up on what Isurus Gaming did really well, but honestly, it was just some incredibly good macro. They would rotate between the lanes, and they work as a team incredibly well. So they would rotate between the objectives, and they just set things up. They'd set up vision control. They do everything they needed to do to win the game. It just means that there's not a lot for me to know that's really clear that I can say about them going into the midseason invitational. But if they can so thoroughly destroy Furious Gaming, even on a bad day, I think their chances at MSI are pretty good. Because one thing I've noticed is that compared to a lot of the other wildcard regions, I think the CLS has one better team fighting, and they know how to work together as a team a bit better than most of the other wildcard regions. Like I've seen games in other regions. I've seen. Oh, and another thing, they actually know how to draft. That is a big thing.
Yeah.
So compared to the other regions, I think these are three things that basically everyone in the CLS can do better than other wildcard regions. So I think that their chances are better than average. I do think that Brazil, who I haven't actually watched any games of, is probably better than them. But I think that as far as Easers Gaming improving at MSI, I hope they do. But I think that the problems with their team are mostly individually focused, like particularly their bottom lane and their inconsistent top laners. So I'm not sure if they'll really get a ton out of visiting MSI, just because they already have really great teamwork. But I am looking forward to see whether that teamwork is as good as the international teams if they go to MSI and they can translate that teamwork and that macro so directly that they can actually take a couple of wins, or if the weaknesses that are in Easerace Gaming's lineup end up being capitalized and punished by just better teams. That is what I'm worried about happening. That's why another reason I was really looking forward to Furious Gaming going to the midseason invitational, just because on an individual level, while as a team they're probably not as good as Easerace, their individual players are all really good. I don't think there's a single member on Furious Gaming that isn't the best or second best in their role in the entire league.
All right. So you kind of skirted around it there. So let's get into serious talk.
Okay.
Where in terms of the wildcard regions do you see the CLS? Just below Brazil, or do you think they might be a bit lower than that as well?
Let me pull up a list to refresh my memory so I can.
We have Oceania. We have the GPL, which is Southeast Asia. We have obviously Latin America North. We have the CIS. We have Turkey. Yeah, I think that was the calendar. Did I forget anybody? Oh yeah, Japan, obviously.
Yeah, I'm opening up the MSI article now so that I can see. And never mind, this is the wrong article. But generally, to mention it, I would say they're probably third or fourth among the wildcard regions. Okay, I got the list now. CIS, I don't think is going to perform very well after watching some of their games, which is that's the LCL. Then Latin America North, I'm pretty sure they're not going to do very well. Latin America South has better infrastructure, and just like the it's clear that there's more money in Latin America South than there is in Latin America North, and I don't think Latin America North is really going to make a dent. I'm not sure about Oceania. Southeast Asia, I'm also not sure.
As far as I've heard, Oceania is pretty much at the bottom right now of the wildcard regions.
Oh, okay. So, then I would say that first is probably going to be Brazil from wildcard regions. Second would probably go to the LMS, and then I would say
LMS.
That's Taiwan.
That's not a wildcard region.
Flash Wolves.
Yeah, they're not a wildcard region.
They're not a major region, are they?
They are, and they're definitely better than Brazil. If I'm honest here, like Flash Wolves.
I got them mixed up. My bad.
Yeah.
But anyways, I would say that as far as those are concerned, I would say Latin America South slots in right below Brazil and Taiwan. I might be overestimating them, but I think that's where they fall.
All right, I might disagree with that, but not today, I guess. So
what, are you gonna argue for the LCL?
I do think they have the qualities, but let's not do this. Let's not do this right now. I still have an interview with Magical Voice coming up on that topic.
Oh, that's good. I'll invade the interview.
Obviously, less of an interview because I have actually casted more LCL than him. No, I do respect him.
Interview yourself.
Maybe he can interview me.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
All right. Yeah. So, do you think that the CLS region has any chance of making it through the play-in, which means not only beating the wildcard regions, but also getting past either the LMS or the NALCS in the play-in to get to the stage with Europe, China, and Korea?
I think they will make it to round 2.
Round 2 is what exactly for you?
It's the one where they play NA and LMS. I think they will make it that far, and then they will lose to whichever team they go up against. That's what I think will happen.
All right. Is there a chance they make it further? Like if they really show up?
If they really show up, I think maybe they could beat whatever NA team is. But the chances of that are incredibly slim. I don't think they can beat the LMS team.
All right. So, do you have anything else to say about the CLS region here right now?
No, I think I've pretty thoroughly broken down like Isurus. Like there are other teams in the league, obviously, but I think the important ones were definitely Isurus Gaming, Last Kings, and Furious, because those are the only 3 teams that are good enough to be relevant to the international discussion. The bottom 3 definitely are not. I also mentioned Rebirth, but I don't think they're up there.
You also mentioned KLG.
Yeah, I did mention KLG, but they're way at the bottom.
Okay, let's actually mention the last team. So that is?
That would be KLG. HalfNet Esports, that was them.
All right. Just to be fair and mention everybody. So
we'll mention everybody.
So if you want to see the CLS this season or the playoffs, you can find them on the Competeleague YouTube channel. I'll link that down below. With Novem, Doctor, J-Force, Joker. Did I miss anybody? I was there once.
Nope, that's it.
I was there once.
But then we kicked you out.
Yeah, for good reason. That was the worst cast of my life. Anyway, and if you want to watch the CLS next season, definitely follow the Competeleague Twitch channel, twitch.tv. Yeah, and I think that is about it. Thank you for coming on, Novem.
No problem.
And see you with the next interview with Magical Voice then.